days I walk away from sessions feeling heavy and I can name every single hard thing that happened that day. Then a lot of times later on, I remember, wait, that 2 o'clock session was hard because my client set a boundary for the first time and was really struggling to integrate it. Or, oh yeah, my 9 a.m. dissociated a little bit less. And they were then, of course, feeling the activation in session. Oh, and my 4 o'clock told me about how they felt about our rupture in the last session, and we worked through it. These are all moments of vicarious resilience, which is this beautiful thing that happens in us as trauma therapists when we get to witness someone else's strength and recovery up close, and our nervous system actually takes it in. Now, before we get any further with this, I do want to ask you a question. I ask this every time I teach about vicarious resilience. Do you even know what it is? Have you ever heard of it? Just say yes or no in the comments, and it's okay if you don't. I've made it my mission to spread the word about vicarious resilience because most of the time, when I ask this with a live group of people, there are barely any hands that go up, and the ones that do usually learned about it from me. Oh, and if you don't already know me, hi, I'm Jenny. I'm a trauma psychologist and founder of the Brave Trauma Therapist Collective, where we make sure that trauma therapists have something left for themselves at the end of the day. Okay, back to vicarious resilience. Working with it can be weirdly hard at first because we're evolutionarily wired for survival. So our brains are designed to pick up on the negative, to hold on to it, to replay it, catalog it, because that's how we stay safe, right? But once you learn how to notice the beautiful glimmers of vicarious resilience in your work, to install them in your brain and body and enhance the experience, vicarious resilience truly becomes a renewable energy source in your work. So you don't have to add more stuff to your to-do list, okay? Then honestly, the hardest part is learning how to spot it, which is why I'm teaching you these 7 questions today that will help you capture vicarious resilience before you forget it even happened. Now, let me define it really clearly first before we get any further. Vicarious resilience is the positive internal shift that happens in you when you witness your client's resilience up close. Not because the work is easy. Notice how the examples at the beginning of this video were not full of rainbows and butterflies, right? And we don't get to experience this because we're ignoring the hard parts of the work either. It happens because you are sitting in a room in a session with someone while they do something brave and courageous. And then your nervous system learns, oh, humans can change, repair is possible. And I want to say this because people sometimes get confused. Vicarious trauma is what happens when your system absorbs the impact of what your clients have lived through, that stress and trauma you're working on. It can make you feel more hypervigilance, more heaviness, more stuckness if you're not wringing out your vicarious trauma sponge. Vicarious resilience, on the other hand, is what happens when your system absorbs the reality that healing happens too. With that, you carry then more steadiness, more openness, more belief in repair. And just to be clear, these both exist at the same time because both vicarious trauma and vicarious resilience happen in your brain and body through the empathic engagement you experience in your work as a trauma therapist. That means that you can be impacted by the trauma and still be shaped by the resilience all at the same time. So the goal here isn't to pretend that vicarious trauma isn't real. It's very much real. It's to train your brain to stop missing the protective material that's also showing up in your sessions. This brings us to the first question that will help you start identifying and noticing vicarious resilience in your own work. What strength did I witness today that I don't want to forget? In trauma work, it's so easy for our attention to get pulled towards what hurt, what's breaking, what's unsafe, what's unresolved. And that's just natural. It's part of what makes you a good trauma therapist. You want to help your clients with this stuff. But if you only track pain, your nervous system starts to believe pain is the whole story. So noticing your client's strength is how you actually stay oriented to that complete story, the whole context. And of course, the strength doesn't erase the trauma. it sits right next to it. Sometimes it's obvious, like a boundary or a big breakthrough, but most of the time it's hiding and it's easy to miss. So if you hear this question and your mind goes blank at first, that's so normal, especially if you've had a heavy day, a heavy week, or you're carrying a lot right now, which most of us are. Keep looking anyway in these moments, okay? Because your client's strength is in there. It might be that they are showing up when they wanted to cancel. They're telling you the truth instead of performing. They're noticing a body sensation for just 2 seconds longer than usual, or staying in the room during discomfort. Maybe they're letting you matter to them a little more than they allowed last month. And the practice here is simple. You're training your attention to find what's working, even inside of what's hard, especially inside of what's hard. So I'm going to give you an anchor for this question and all the questions in this video. I just want you to fill in the blank. Today I witnessed blank. Go ahead, hit pause, write down the strength in that blank spot, okay, before we hop into question 2. Okay, you ready? The second question helps us install vicarious resilience because it moves beyond just noticing and identifying it, which are super important too. This question asks, how did this client's courage shift my perspective even just a little bit? This is important because sometimes vicarious resilience doesn't feel like inspiration. It's often way sneakier than that. It's more like your worldview tilts a few degrees and you don't even notice it until later. I'm thinking of the kind of session where nothing looks dramatic on paper. There's no huge breakthrough, no perfect insight, just a client showing up again, saying the honest thing instead of the polished thing, staying in the room with you for more than 10 seconds than they usually can. And then later, maybe you're making dinner or you're brushing your teeth and you catch yourself thinking, oh, people really can do hard things and keep going. Or, oh yeah, change can be slow and still be real. Or even, oh, right, repair doesn't require perfection. Imagine that. That's the shift I want you to track because trauma work can quietly train our brains to scan for what's unsafe, fragile, what's about to fall apart. And again, that's nothing wrong. It's part of how you've learned to stay attuned and how your brain and body evolved to stay safe. And this question is a way of letting your nervous system register the other truth that's also happening in the room, that courage is real. It's contagious in the best way. So here's your anchor for this question. Finish the sentence wherever you started writing for the first one. Because of this client, I now see blank. What is it that you can now see? What is that shift, that tilt in your perspective because of some work that you did recently? All right. Question 3, where did I feel moved instead of drained today? In trauma therapy, there's a really common mix-up for us. We feel a lot, and it's easy to assume that that means we're depleted. But emotionally intense and draining are not automatically the same thing. Sometimes the intensity is actually your system recognizing contact. Like when something real happens in the room or a client lets you matter for a second. Those moments when a truth finally landed, a grief was held without being rushed, a protective part softened just a tiny little fraction. These experiences with our dear clients can bring tears or a lump in your throat or that feeling of being deeply present and connected. And even though, yes, it's effortful, it often has a different aftertaste than depletion. Depletion usually feels like scattered, foggy, braced, irritated, numb, or like your body just wants to get away from the world. Moved often feels like tender, connected, more clear, or more steady. Not happy necessarily, but meaningful. And here's why this question matters. If you accidentally label every intense moment as too much, you're going to start armoring up against the parts of the work that are really protective for you. You'll miss the moments that remind your nervous system, this work is heavy, yes, and it's real. And something is happening here. So when you ask this question, you're training discernment for your nervous system. You're teaching yourself to separate what costs you and gets you stuck from what costs you and resolves from what gives something back. And that distinction's a big deal over years of practice, right? So, to anchor into this one, I want to make it almost absurdly simple. Finish these sentences, okay? One moment today I felt moved was fill in the blank. One moment I felt drained was fill in the blank. Just both of those questions. You don't need to analyze, okay? Just write it down. It's just data. And you can notice what the difference is between moved and drained, but don't get too stuck in the weeds right now. All right, moving on to question 4. This one asks, what belief about people softened for me today? Trauma work hardens parts of us, right? And not because we're cynical, but because we sit close to what happens when people aren't protected, when they aren't believed and aren't treated with care. Your brain adapts to the world that you're paying attention to all day. So when something softens even a little, it's worth tracking. And this isn't about forcing yourself into optimism. It's about noticing when your worldview becomes less clenched, maybe. When you catch yourself thinking something that you didn't have access to a year ago or even a month ago. Sometimes it's a belief about people or a belief about healing, a belief about the nervous system itself. It can sound like, I guess people don't always stay stuck. Or even after a long time, something can shift. Or, repair's not a fantasy. Safety can be built, not just found. Courage can look quiet and still count. And sometimes the softening isn't even a thought. It's a physical and somatic feeling. Like you're less braced when someone tells you something hard, or you don't go straight to dread the second a client says, whew, we got some stuff to work on today. Like you can stay curious instead of going into catastrophe mode. That's the kind of thing that keeps you from burning out in the slow way. Because burnout's not only about volume of trauma exposure, it's also about what your nervous system starts believing about the world over time. So I'm asking you to track, where did your belief loosen, even just a little bit, because you witnessed something true? And to anchor this one, just say it real plainly. A belief that softened for me today was fill in the blank. And, as before we move on to the next question, I do want to acknowledge as we go through all these today, it's okay if you're using the same client for each of them, or if you're thinking beyond the sessions that you had today or yesterday. And as you use these moving forward in your practice, just pick out one to try each day. The list of all 7 questions is in the description below to make it easy to save this video, come back, and choose one every day, okay? Moving on to question 5. What did I learn about regulation from my clients today? Your clients are teaching you regulation all the time, whether you realize it or not. Not the polished, beautiful version of regulation that we learn in the textbooks, the real one, the one that happens inside of a nervous system that has history. Regulation that happens while someone is living with stress and still showing up in their life. Sometimes what you learn is obvious, right? They paused and took a breath. They took a sip of water. They asked for a break. They looked around the room. They grounded and named what was happening in their body. But a lot of the time, what you learn is subtler and honestly more useful in the long term, like how someone returns after being activated, how someone recovers after rupture, how someone tolerates uncertainty without needing to solve it in the next 30 seconds, and how someone notices the urge to shut down and chooses just one tiny small step towards staying present. I also really like this question because it trains you to see your clients as whole humans, not just symptom presentations. And that keeps your clinical work sharper. You start tracking patterns of capacity, not just patterns of distress. And on a nervous system level, when you name what you learned, you're letting your body take in, oh, right, that's possible. not in a cheesy way, but in a real lived way. It's like you're collecting proof that regulation is real and it comes in more than one form. So, to anchor this one, write down for yourself one regulation skill I saw today was blank. And keep an open mind. Remember, it may not look like what you learned in grad school. It probably doesn't. So, you are learning right alongside your clients too. All right, we're in the home stretch now. Question 6 of 7. What part of myself grew today? This one is non-negotiable for me because if you're a trauma therapist, you are developing all the time, even if no one's pointing it out. And if you don't name your own growth, your brain will default to tracking your mistakes, your uncertainty, and everything that you wish you'd done differently. Especially if you have even a little, or let's be honest, a lot of imposter syndrome in the mix, because we all do. Now, growth for you might look like you tolerated silence longer instead of rescuing your client, or you didn't overfunction when a client was dysregulated or checked out. Maybe you name something cleanly and kindly and you're celebrating that. Or again, I've been talking a lot about rupture here because it is such an important part of our work and of the growth that we experience. Maybe you repaired a rupture faster than you used to. Or you held a boundary and reached out for your own support instead of spiraling after the session. Oh my God, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Then you stayed regulated when you felt pulled and noticed your own activation sooner without shaming yourself for experiencing it. When you name your own growth, you stop relating to your work like it's just output. You start relating to it like a practice that's shaping you. And that matters because your ability to keep doing this work isn't just about reducing the hard parts. It's also about having a felt sense of your own capacity expanding over time. Okay, now for the anchor. Complete this sentence along with all the other ones on that paper, wherever you're writing it down. Today, I grew in my ability to blank. State it as a fact. Don't minimize, no but, just name it. All right, last question. Question 7. This asks, who needs to hear this story of resilience other than me? Vicarious resilience compounds when it's shared. And this is the key to enhancing it once you've learned how to identify and install it in your brain and body. And sharing it, it's not about performing stuff. It's not just content, not let me tell you about my day dump. I mean, shared in a way that helps your nervous system integrate what it witnessed. Because when you say it out loud to another human, ideally a trauma therapist who really gets what it's like to do this work, you're doing something so powerful. You're taking a moment that could have stayed private and fleeting, and you're giving it a place to land. You're making it real. And sometimes that looks like bringing it to consultation, saying, I really just want to share a moment of vicarious resilience today. Simple as that. It's something we do all the time in the Brave Trauma Therapist Collective because it not only makes it real for your brain and body, it has a positive effect on everyone receiving this beautiful story too. Sometimes it might be reaching out to a colleague and letting them know, hey, quick win from today. I watched a client come back from rupture. It could be putting it in your own notes for future you, because future you is going to have a day where you need proof that people can heal. And if you're doing this work on your own, you can easily miss the relational integration piece. You end up holding everything in your own system. So for you, sharing is an extra. It's a necessary part of how you metabolize experience. Okay, anchor for this last one. I'm going to share this with insert your person, the place you're going to share it, by insert a quick message, consult, voice note, right? So for example, I'm going to share this with my colleague by telling them about it in consultation. So it's about just making a plan for how you're going to share these moments of vicarious resilience with other people who get it, keeping HIPAA and privacy in mind, of course. But once you have that plan, it makes it doable. And it's just a simple, tiny plan, okay? And then once you do share it, notice what it's like in your brain, in your body, in your relationship. All right, we made it through all the questions and it was a lot of information, right? So here's what I hope you take from this. Vicarious resilience, it's not a bonus. It's not nice when it happens. it's protective material that your nervous system needs if you're going to keep showing up for trauma work in the long term, if you're going to keep doing the work you love. And the truth is, a lot of trauma therapists are walking around with these moments of courage and repair passing right through them. Not because they don't care, but because no one taught them how to identify, install, and enhance this vicarious resilience. So, these 7 questions are a way to start changing that. And over time, this really can become a renewable energy source in your work, not because the work gets lighter, we can't control that, but because you're no longer carrying only the weight. If you want to get deeper into understanding what vicarious resilience is like for you, be sure to grab my free vicarious resilience tracker at braveproviders.com/VR tracker. It's simple, it's quick, it'll help you build the habit. And one more thing before you go, tell me in the comments, which question hit you the most today?